So let me first talk a little bit about projects and schedules. I have met many projects in my career, and I'm quite fortunate to have done so, and many of them start with a schedule. Now, sometimes those schedules are figments of someone's imagination. Sometimes they're figments of the project team's imagination. Sometimes, however, the project team has done as much as they can to create a reasonable schedule. And then something happens. Sometimes the project team doesn't meet the schedule because of unanticipated difficulties. But that's not always the reason the project team doesn't meet the schedule. Sometimes the project team can't create a reasonable schedule, and sometimes the project team doesn't meet a reasonable schedule because of one of the management schedule games. So the first thing we're going to talk about, and Michael, if you can go to the next slide, please, slide 7, is a very common management schedule game called Bring Me a Rock. Bring Me a Rock happens when you work with a project team, if you're a project manager, or you are part of the project team, and you all get together and you even do stickies on the wall, and you come up with all of your possible what-if scenarios, and you come up with a reasonable and aggressive schedule. You don't have to have all of the moons lined up. Not everything has to be in alignment, but you still need maybe just a little luck to get through the schedule. But it's reasonable. And assuming you have the right people and assuming nothing really terrible goes wrong, you could meet the schedule. And then you bring the schedule to your manager. And your manager says, can you bring it in at all? And you look at your manager like he or she is a little nuts, and you say, well, okay, I guess I'll try. And now you go back to the team and you say, well, we're supposed to bring it in. And the team says, okay, how are we going to do that? Well, maybe we can double up on this stuff here. Maybe we can get lucky over here. Certainly a few years ago, everyone said, well, we can cut the testing out, right? Those of you who are testers are nodding your heads or rolling on the floor laughing. And the problem is that you then come up with a shorter schedule. You bring it to your manager, and your manager says, can you bring it in anymore? Now, you've by now spent a whole bunch of time generating the schedule. You're not actually working on the project. And so maybe you slash and burn pieces of the schedule, and you bring it back, and your manager says, well, how about bringing it in another month or another few weeks? And by this time, if you're not a complete lunatic, you've said, what do you want? When do you want this project done? Because I can't deliver what you want in this amount of time. And that's the essence of Bring Me a Rock, that no matter what kind of a schedule you bring to your manager, you have to, you end up coming back and saying, well, will this schedule work? What about this one over here? This one's smaller and rounder. This one's taller and longer. Which rock would you really like? So you have a few ideas. I have a few ideas at least about how you can manage the schedule game. The first is make sure you've been extremely clear about what you're providing. Are you talking about the number of features, the defect levels that your management is going to get for this particular date? Because sometimes all managers care about is that you have something that they can sell by a particular date. Maybe you don't need to have that much stuff. It could happen. Maybe not in your organization, but in others. You definitely want to elicit success criteria from your management to understand what success means for this project. Is there one capability you need to have in this product, and that all you have to do with this project is finish that one capability, or is there something else? So understanding what success means is critical. I think you need to define release criteria. Sometimes managers fall into Bring Me a Rock, thinking that they can just keep pushing and pushing on the technical staff to deliver something just as good, faster. And if you push back by defining release criteria and saying, well, we no longer can get this level of defects. Our level of defects are going to go up higher. We no longer can get these kinds of features. The number of features is going to go down. We no longer can do these kinds of things. We no longer can do these kinds of things given this new date. And no matter what happens, you need to be able to negotiate about the release date, that's what I mean by time, about the feature set, and about the defect levels. Now, one way you can sidestep the Bring Me a Rock schedule game is to use some of the Agile practices. And one that works particularly well is a ranked product backlog. Now, if you don't know what a ranked product backlog is, it's a list of requirements in rank order. Ranking means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on. There's no such thing as high, medium, and low. You all know what happens with high, medium, and low. You never get to the lows, you rarely get to the mediums, and how can you tell which one of the highs you're supposed to do first? So when I talk about a ranked product backlog, I really do mean this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Once you have a ranked product backlog, you can then, I also then recommend you implement by those features inside time boxes. And if you're doing that, your management can say, okay, it's June 5th tomorrow. We need to release. But if you've been implementing by feature in time boxes and you've been finishing as you go, and with any luck, if you've been testing as you go, you actually could release. Maybe you still have some work to do. But you're a lot closer to being able to see an end date if you're working on things in rank order, if you're finishing things as you go, and if you're using time boxes to help focus the team. So Bring Me a Rock is a very frustrating schedule game, but you actually have many alternatives to deal with it. Michael, let's go on to slide 8, please. One of the dangerous schedule games is hope is our most important strategy. I was working with a client several years ago. They had a new language. They were working on a new product. People did not have domain expertise. They'd never worked in this particular domain before. This happened to be back in the time of moving from mainframe to client server. They'd never done a client server application before. Everything about this product was new. And I went to the project manager and to the VP who were in charge, and I said, so what's your strategy? And they kind of looked at each other, and the project manager said, prayer, and the VP said, hope. I really hope we can do this. Hope is not a strategy to getting projects done. It's just not going to work. There are things you can do as a project manager. And if you're a technical lead, you can certainly do this also. One is to articulate the risks in the project. Sometimes people fall into hope as our most important strategy because they haven't actually thought hard about the risks. The risks are so overwhelming, they're afraid to deal with them. So the first thing you do, you've heard the phrase, face your fears, face your risks. Make sure you write them down. Now, just because you can see 500 risks doesn't mean you have to write them all down, doesn't mean you have to freak everybody out, but get them written down, because as part of writing down the risk, you're going to write down a mitigation strategy. And as soon as you start making some plans to figure out how you're going to mitigate this problem, this risk, you are in much better shape. You're no longer paralyzed by fear. You can do something. You have a plan of action. And the next thing I'm going to tell you is to use any life cycle other than a serial life cycle. The serial life cycles are waterfall, stage gate, anything that says first we try and get requirements, then we try and do architecture and analysis, then we try and do design, then we try and write the code, then we try and test the code. If you have a life cycle that says first we do this and then, you cannot make that life cycle work in this schedule game. It is not possible. You can use an iterative life cycle to prototype and see if you are making any progress.